Powered by Riverside.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome into a brand new episode of the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Codd, this evening, and episode 3 as we enter in the 2025 season in less than, 5 days? No, my math's way off, sorry. Yeah, actually, no, I'm sorry. It is 5 days. 5 days away from Bowman Gray Stadium for the Busch Lake Clash down there. Super excited to have everyone alongside me as we talk about the Chevrolets this evening. We have done the Toyotas, we've done the Fords, we're going into the Chevrolets. But before we get tonight's show started, why don't we give a little clap out to The Rock? Why don't we give that? Let's give a shout out to Rockingham, right? Yeah, right there. There's the clap, guys. And for everyone that goes, well, what's that clap for? Well, today, guys, for the first time since 2013 it was, we've actually had cars at The Rock. They were doing some testing today. We actually had a live audience down there. So job well done for all the fans that got out there for the testing. Super excited to see the testing done at the Rockingham Motor Speedway. It was really intriguing. I actually was watching it through my phone. I was absolutely fascinated by the Xfinity Series testing. Had a blast watching it. And again, I appreciate all the fans that kind of was on social media during the testing that was like, hey, look what's going on down here at Rockingham. So before we kick tonight's show off, discussing a few things, let's get into some multiple ways to listen to us. We have a lot of new fans that have joined us on the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast via Facebook, social media. Multiple ways to listen to us, folks. First, each Tuesday night throughout the whole entire season, we will be having a live episode on YouTube. Just check us out on YouTube at the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast. We'll have a live recording. Feel free to join us. Feel free to talk to us during the episode. We'll definitely read some answers, and we have something coming up as well that we'll be making an announcement in a few minutes. If you do miss the live stream episodes on Tuesday nights, we will be uploading each episode each week up on Wednesdays. Multiple platforms to listen to those episodes from. 1, Amazon Music. 2, YouTube, our YouTube channel. You can watch the video. iHeartRadio, and of course our OG source, Spotify, which personally is my favorite. And then, of course, if you love what you're hearing through this podcast, which we hope you do, because we do try to strive and make this one of the best enjoyable shows you guys can listen to. If you enjoy us, subscribe to us on our YouTube page at the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast, or follow us on Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, or Spotify. I appreciate all the love and the support. And of course, we have our Facebook page at the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast, so feel free to follow us as well on that platform. Cool. Couple show announcements this week before we really start getting into the racing discussion with all of you. Few show announcements this week. We're going to start things off with this one, right? You guys have heard me now talk about the last couple of weeks. I will continuously bring this up because I'm taking a lot of pride on bringing the podcast on the road to multiple tracks this year in 2025. Again, we will be at Pocono for our annual Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast tailgate. Had a great time with a lot of good fans last year. Let's make this bigger. Let's make this better. Let's have more of an entertainment atmosphere or entertaining atmosphere altogether at the Tricky Triangle. Second show on the road is going to be Dover. We'll be doing a live episode down at the track at the Monster Mile. So if you've been with us for a while now, you have seen that we've done a live episode at Daytona last year. We did a live episode at Martinsville in the playoffs. We'll be basically doing the same format live from the Monster Mile. So we're very excited for that. First time down at Dover, probably, as I said before, since 2019. I'm from the southeast corner of Pennsylvania, out near Philadelphia. I'm going to be honest, for years, that date in late April pissed me off because that is one of Delaware's most rainiest time of the year. And we constantly tried to force Dover into that weekend. So now that it's in July, we're going to make an attempt down there. It'll probably freaking rain. But the point is, we're going to give it one more shot down at the Monster Mile. Final show announcement this week because we are starting the green flag on the 2025 season on Sunday. You've heard me talk about this for the last couple of weeks. I was thinking about starting it tonight because of some of the announcements and all that type of stuff, but I had said, you know what? Let's take a back seat. We'll still kick it off next week. That's right. The blown engine line will be up and running next week after Bowman Gray. So if you follow us on YouTube during our live stream, that our chat will be the blown engine line. So here's the criteria. Are you pissed at your favorite driver? Are you pissed at your favorite crew chief or driver's crew chief? Are you pissed at your favorite driver's pit crew? Are you pissed off at Amazon or Mother Nature? Whatever it is, chat us. What we will do is try to be the peer mediator and try to bring balance it back into your life and try to walk you off that ledge. So the blown engine line will be up and running after Bowman Gray this coming their next week's episode. As I said, probably could have started this week with some of the announcements and some announcements that people are going to hate, how people are complaining about Bowman Gray, how people were complaining about the LA Coliseum. Doesn't matter. Anyways, it'll be up and running next week, so stay tuned for that. All right. Let's take the green and checker flag on those two segments of tonight's episode. Before we get into the fast headliners, courtesy of jski.com, let's hop over to the chat. We got somebody up there and checking in with us. Excuse me. Mark from Racing Paradise. Great podcast, by the way. Great podcast. They're going to be recording tonight at 10:40. Follow them and listen to them as well. Mark, he said, let's go with Rockingham. Yes, sir. I'm freaking stoked, man. Really stoked about that one. Again, Racing Paradise. If you don't follow them or listen to them, it's a must. Go over on Facebook, follow them, and then, like I said, their episode will be recording actually right after us. So, all right, so let's hop into some fast headliners courtesy of jski.com this week. A lot of them. Bear with me. Headliner number one, Colleague Racing announced that Seabest returns to the organization as a primary partner for Ty Dillon in the number 10 Chevrolet for 20 races during the 2025 campaign, starting with the Cookout Clash at Bowman Gray Stadium on February 2nd. Seabest proudly serves as the flagship brand of Beaver Street Fisheries. So if anyone's wondering what the hell is Seabest, that's what it is. Sponsorship update number two, courtesy of jski.com. Lance Crackers will be partnering with Chase Briscoe and Joe Gibbs Racing. Lance Crackers will be a associated partner of Chase Briscoe because it's been officially announced that Bass Pro Shop is actually going to be on that car for Chase Briscoe all season long, all 36 races. Really cool to see. I know Ally Financial is on Bowman's car for all 36. I'm hoping that we start seeing some of these sponsorships kind of come back to 36 races. Fraternal Order of Eagles sponsoring Justin Haley at the Clash. Fraternal Order of Eagles, they've been with Haley for a while. You've probably seen the sponsorship on those cars for multiple years by now. Corey LaJoie, Danielle Trotta will be joining Prime Video's NASCAR coverage. So Corey LaJoie, all offseason, we kind of were hearing that some rumblings, maybe he goes to Rick Ware Racing. That's where he finished the season off last year. He's going to be racing part-time with Rick Ware Racing this year, but kind of turning his attention into the NASCAR media. So him and Danielle Trotta will be joining Prime Video's NASCAR coverage. So Prime's actually linking up some pretty good analysis, in my opinion. Update number 5, Jimmy Johnson named majority owner of Legacy Motor Club. Update number 6, iRacing's NASCAR 25, the feature to Cup, Xfinity, Trucks, and ARCA Menard series in the video game. iRacing is pleased to confirm that NASCAR 25, the first standalone NASCAR console title produced by iRacing, will feature 4 series upon its release later this year. For the first time in NASCAR video game history, the ARCA Menard series will be joining NASCAR's 3 national tours as part of the journey through the career path of the sport's top driver. So NASCAR 25, I believe, is coming out this upcoming fall, and you will have an opportunity in career mode to go through the ARCA, Trucks, Xfinity, and Cup. Update number 7, Saya Freight will be joining Joe Gibbs Racing to sponsor Ty Gibbs in 7 races. So Ty Gibbs locks up a new sponsorship. Saya Inc. is excited to announce that Saya Freight has partnered with Joe Gibbs Racing for a multi-year sponsorship of Ty Gibbs in the number 54 Toyota Camry in the NASCAR Cup Series. Update number 8, Red Bull is going to be joining Trackhouse Racing to sponsor Shane Van Gisbergen and Connor Zilisch. Trackhouse Racing announced that Red Bull will serve as the official energy drink of Trackhouse Racing and the primary partner of Shane Van Gisbergen's number 88 Chevrolet in 5 Cup Series races, as well as Cup Series debut of 18-year-old Connor Zilisch, who will drive the number 87 Red Bull Chevrolet at the Circuits of the America on March 2nd. So I kind of posted this question last week. We'll get back to it. With Red Bull joining the sport, hopefully another couple of sponsors that used to be part of the sport, will they come back into the sport? Red Bull was the first one. Hopefully we see a couple more. Update number 9, Worth Group sponsoring the Texas Cup race this spring. Update number 10, Auto Trader Echo Park Automotive will be sponsoring the Dover Cup race in the summer. So Worth and Auto Trader basically traded sponsorships within each other. Update number 11, Benebone to sponsor Zane Smith in 3 races. Benebone, a leading U.S. brand of durable dog toys, is back with Front Row Motorsports as a primary partner of Zane Smith in the 38 Ford Mustang Dark Horse team. Update number 12, NASCAR is to use option tire at the Phoenix Spring Race. That's going to be pretty exciting. That was a pretty nice headliner I'm pretty excited about as well. Update number 13, Kings Hawaiian to sponsor Denny Hamlin. This one's pretty big, right? We've seen Denny Hamlin. He's lost some sponsorships. FedEx clearly was the big one. I guess everyone was wondering when is Denny going to get that next sponsorship? Who's going to be the next sponsor? We haven't heard anything from Mavis Discount Tire yet. But Kings Hawaiian is going to be stepping up to the plate for 4 races with Denny Hamlin in 2025. First one will be at Atlanta Motor Speedway on June 28th, followed up by Daytona in August, Bristol in September, and Martinsville in October. So look out for that King Hawaiian's car. Update number 14, Rush Truck Centers will be sponsoring Noah Gragson for 8 races. We kind of touched base on this last week, but they basically just confirmed the schedule of races that Noah will be sponsored with. The Rush will be starting the sponsorship with Noah Gragson for the Daytona 500. He'll be on the car again at the Circuits of the Americas, then at Texas Motor Speedway, Kansas, Nashville, Indy, Bristol, and Talladega in the fall. And then update number 15, Sonny D will be sponsoring Ricky Stenhouse Jr. for 5 races. So Hayek Motorsports and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. come to an agreement for 5 races with Sonny D, which was formerly with Josh Berry last year. So all sponsorship updates, again, courtesy of jski.com. Follow them on X, Facebook, or by web at www.jski.com. So a lot of sponsorship updates, kind of expected as we're coming in really into the beginning of the season, right? There was a lot of teams that we didn't really know what direction they were going to go. Like I said, Denny Hamlin was a big one with FedEx leaving. Mavis Discount Tire it looks like it's not going to be returning. So the Kings Hawaiian update was pretty big. But this is what we expect, right? We all expect this going into the season. So, all right. Final lap headliner, courtesy of Zach Sternilo of NASCAR.com, and that's going to be NASCAR to keep the playoff format for the 2025 season and explore changes for 2026. So I know we have a lot of fans on the call and a lot of fans that listen to us that is going to be really disappointed with this announcement from NASCAR. Again, we're going to brief over the article real quick, kind of get into some detailed thoughts on it. No changes are going to happen in the 2025 campaign. John Props basically said, I don't think we want to get in the habit of making small little tweaks every season to the playoffs. Again, John Props is NASCAR's Executive Vice President, Chief Racing Development Officer. He also said where we landed was for 2025, not making any changes to the playoffs. Throughout the course of this year, in the 2025 season, he mentioned that they'll basically be working together with some media folks, some OEMs, Goodyear drivers, or Goodyear tires and drivers to possibly talk about a new format going into 2026. Basically, as he said, basically we look at that as a work stream for a group of our stakeholders this year to look at it going into the future. The playoffs were meant to create those moments, which I feel like they did, Prop said. And on the other hand, there's the fan feedback, which we hear loud and clear on this particular subject. But again, he basically reiterated that with the playoff system, it is designed for someone like Joey Logano to go win the championship. Prop said as well, officials heard from three schools of thought: one that loves the playoffs, one that hates them, and one fell in the middle. Enjoying the playoffs, wanting to fix them, but an overriding uncertainty of what to do to fix the playoffs. We just didn't get to a point where we felt like we have to do it, Prop said. But we hear the fans loud and clear and are looking at it actively. So we'll post this article on our Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast Facebook page. You'll have an opportunity to take a look at it. It'll probably be up later this week. But some NASCAR playoff thoughts. And again, I don't really want to, I want to get into a nice discussion with you, whoever is listening. But at the same time, I feel like we have beaten this topic up pretty good, not just on this podcast, but all throughout the off season. Look, last week I asked the question because I'm a big college football fan and I watched what college football did, right? They did this, new 12-team format in the playoffs. The top four teams in the playoffs had a chance for a bye. I thought that NASCAR could pull something like that and apply it to the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs. But I've also said I've been very adamant on keeping the playoffs the way they are. We, as fans, always want to know who is the best driver, who is the best, and again, it's the conversation of who is the best athlete. Who's the best athlete? I want a guy that can face adversity, a guy that can go out and win. I understand the whole school of thought of we need to reward consistency. And I hear that argument all the time. But what other sport in the world rewards consistency? That argument would be the equivalent of, well, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers should win the championship because they were very consistent this year. It sounds silly. And I get it, it's not a ball and stick sport, NASCAR, but again, NASCAR drivers are in that conversation all the time of how elite of an athlete they are. I want someone that can overcome adversity. Joey Logano did that multiple times this past year. If you listen to us over the course of the last year, I had Joey Logano get knocked out in the round of 16 last year. Back against the wall down in Atlanta, he goes in and ends up winning the race. Okay, the whole Charlotte Roval debacle with Alex Bowman getting disqualified, back in the door Joey Logano in. But Joey Logano still had to win a race. And that's exactly what he did. And I said this. So many drivers, so many crew chiefs punched air when he won that race. That's what makes the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs special. They essentially changed the system because they were tired of rewarding consistency. Let's get to the chat line. A couple people checking in with us on this topic. I had Mark. Mark checks in. He goes, Joey's not my champion, LOL. And Trioval, he ended up checking in with us. He said I had Logano in my championship for. So, exactly. I mean, Joey Logano is an elite talent. He's an elite driver. He's an elite talent. Obviously, winning the 3 championships puts him in a new stratosphere of where he stands in the NASCAR overall historical rankings, right? Now, I get that, as I said before, I can understand the logic of, well, we need, Kyle Larson won 5 races last year. We need to reward consistency and all that type of stuff. Again, though, it's the playoffs. Yeah, Kyle Larson won 5 races. He also had issues in the playoffs. He did not come up clutch when he needed to. The first one that comes to my mind is Homestead. Now, granted, if he makes that pass, at the end of the race. We're probably talking about him winning Homestead and probably going into the championship. Like I said last week, I wanted to bring the question up to the fan base. It's like, would you accept the college football playoff as the new playoff format for NASCAR, where 16 drivers enter, the number one seed, whoever wins the regular season points championship, they're the ones that get the first round bye? I think a lot of fans were kind of like, okay, I'm on board with that. But what does the bye include? Well, the first round bye just basically just guarantees you around the 12 appearance. That's it. You still have to race. So again, the playoffs are not changing in 2025, and I hope I hope the regular season champion or the one that wins the most races in the regular season wins the championship this year, because I'm hoping that next offseason we all, podcasters, media personnel, don't have to talk about the playoffs almost every single week. So let's check into our chat real quick again. And we got Trioval. He checks in. He goes, Logano won 4 points in the All Star. I don't know how that's not impressive. I agree with you. I totally agree with you. Won 4 points paying races. And here's the whole thing, Trioval. Going back to your comment, he did it with his back against the wall, right? Like, first round of the playoffs, he won Atlanta. I mean, he was projected to get knocked out in the first round. He ended up winning Atlanta, so it's not like he coasted through the first round. And then, okay, again, the Roval, everyone's going to have that argument, yada, 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 whatever. But then in the round of 8, after he made it, it's not like after Alex Bowman got disqualified and NASCAR went, okay, you know what, Joey, we're going to put you in the championship 4. We're going to put you in the championship 4, Joey, because Alex Bowman got disqualified. No, he had to go win a race. He was below the cut line. And he did that. He did it at Vegas. So I agree with you, Trioval. Yeah, 4 points paying races. Oh, and also, by the way, he also won the race at Phoenix by holding off his teammate, a hard charging Ryan Blaney, to go win that race. To me, it was a pretty earned championship. Mark checks in again. He says, interesting point. I may post something about the format on our page later. Yeah, feel free, Mark. Absolutely. I would love to get that. I would love for all of us to kind of engage in that, audience, or with all of our audiences about it, right? Like, would you like that type of format? I think it'd be kind of interesting if you do change it. I mean, that's the only tweak I would ask is maybe, okay, the regular season points champion gets a bye. I don't need to be like, well, this guy, what's reward? He was really consistent. I don't want that anymore. I enjoy the playoffs. That's what sports are about. Again, article this week was from Zach Sternillo of NASCAR.com. We will post his article on our Facebook page probably either Wednesday or probably later this week. And we'll definitely, for your reading enjoyment as well. So, all right. So I apologize, folks. So it might not be a long episode tonight. My wife ended up getting mad at me for recording for a long time, so I kind of condensed the episodes this week. We are on to our meat and potatoes of tonight's topic, and that's going to be our Chevrolet 2025 race preview, or season preview, excuse me, not race, season preview. And we're going to dive into this topic of conversation. Feel free, if you're listening to us on YouTube, feel free to chime in. If you disagree with us on predictions, we'd love to hear what you have to say. So, Chevrolet 2025 season preview. And listen, Chevrolet, when I was doing my notes, Chevrolet to me, and I know Ford felt the same way. Ford and Chevrolet, I feel like, took a massive impact and change, right? Ford felt like a big impact just because of what we saw with the end of Stewart-Haas racing. And it was like, wow, Ford just lost a 4-car operation. Like, that's pretty massive. And I know that Front Row Motorsports, they ended up getting Noah Gragson. They brought out the other charter. They have now 3 cars. all that good stuff. But Ford or Chevrolet, on the other hand, actually took a pretty interesting twist as well this year. So the Chevrolet teams, let's run through them real quick, and then we're going to talk about each driver and camp as we enter into 2025. So the Chevrolet lineup for 2025. First up is going to be Hayek Motorsports. That's going to be with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. as the driver. Hayek was formerly JTG Doherty Racing. They end up reshaping and reformatting to Hayek. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. will be staying on with the 47 car, excuse me, not 43. Second team up on the Chevrolet stable is going to be Colleague Racing. And their drivers this year are going to be AJ Allmendinger and Ty Dillon. Third in the Chevrolet camp is going to be Spire Motorsports with Justin Haley, Michael McDowell, and Carson Hosevar. And really excited to be talking about Spire. I think they could be the biggest enigma outlier this year. Not too sure what to expect, but we'll get into more details in a second. Fourth team in the Chevrolet camp is going to be Richard Childress Racing in 2025 with Austin Dillon and Kyle Busch coming back. Got the 3G hat on. Fifth team in the Chevrolet stable is going to be Trackhouse Racing with Shane Van Gisbergen, Daniel Suarez, and Ross Chastain. And then the last, obviously, and certainly the best in the Chevrolet camp, Hendrick Motorsports with Alex Bowman, Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson, and William Byron. So let's kick things off with Hayek Motorsports and with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. in the Chevrolet discussion. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. He returns with Hayek Motorsports. As we mentioned in the sponsorship updates, he has Sonny D on board of his car for 5 races. Sonny D was formerly with Josh Berry, excuse me. Sonny D will be returning to Ricky Stenhouse Jr. this year. This team, to me, kind of took a massive hit in regards to sponsorships. Last year, as you remember, they had Kroger. They had all the Kroger brands along with it. Kroger ended up moving this offseason with Ryan Preece over to RFK Racing. So this team is really kind of like, out of all the one-car teams, I'm kind of like, what do I really expect from them? But before we get into what do I expect from them, let's talk about Ricky Stenhouse Jr.'s 2024 campaign. So in 2024, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. had finished 25th in the points. He had a 22.1 average finish with 1 win at Talladega, 3 top 5, 6 top 10s. Biggest thing was he had 14 top 20s. So not terrible. Not terrible. I mean, less than 50% of the races he finished in the top 20. But to me, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is a driver where I think when we look back on his career, we're going to remember him as a massive, massive, massive super speedway ace, right? I think he's got talent. I mean, clearly he does on different types of tracks. I mean, especially dirt. But as I said, I really think that he is a massive super speedway ace at this point in his career. But I'm not going to lie. I mean, again, he finished 22.1 average finish with a team that, let's call it as is, kind of was going through some financial insecurities and was going through a reshuffling, a rebranding, I guess you could say. I thought overall his 2024 was probably what we expected from Ricky Stenhouse Jr., right? I mean, he got the win at Talladega. I mean, it's, super speedway once again. But in reality, like I said, I mean, 3 top 5, 6 top 10s, but the 14 top 20s, right? So there's going to be opportunities for Ricky to, find opportunities to get his car into that territory where he could get into the front maybe, pop off a top 10. Something that popped in my mind, and I know it had nothing to do with 2024, but back in 2022, remember when Chase Elliott won Dover? I mean, second place, it was Ricky Stenhouse Jr. So he's going to have those surprise finishes. And that's what I'm saying. I don't think he's a bad driver. I hear a lot of people say that all the time. Oh, well, Ricky sucks. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. We've heard that for many years. I never felt like he got a good shakeup, though. He was in an organization over at Roush Racing obviously before Brad came on board, they were not really a top flight organization at that point. He comes to JTG Doherty Racing, who, say what you want. I mean, they're not an elite program. They could put a winning car, winning capable car, out onto the track at times, and that's just what JTG did. JTG Doherty did. I mean, Allmendinger won in that car, obviously. So if the driver had the talent at a certain track, they were going to put all their efforts into it, and that's why I felt like with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. So again, one win last year, 3 top 5, 6 top 10s, average finish of 22.1, 28 laps led. But another stat too that to take a look at with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. 7 DNFs. He had 7 DNFs in 2024. As I said last week with multiple drivers, that's a very, very high amount of DNFs. That's going to put you probably, as I'm looking at NASCAR.com to see where we're at with the DNFs. As of now, I'm looking at it. I mean, Ryan Blaney had 7 DNFs last year, so he was tied with Blaney. Harrison Burton had 7. Michael McDowell had 7 DNFs. And Josh Berry ended up having 10. So Berry had the most, and the rest of them were at 7. So DNFs are kind of an outlier, right? I mean, obviously, if you're running in the front of the pack, not on non-super speedways, you're usually pretty safe from a DNF unless you have a mechanical failure. What I expect in 2025 is I definitely expect Ricky probably to lower that number of 7 DNFs. I pretty much expect exactly the identical numbers that he had. I expect probably right where he was with average finish being the same at 22.1. I expect definitely that car to be, I mean, I expect maybe a couple more top 20s, but nothing. I mean, he had 14 last year. I mean, maybe he gets to 18, maybe he gets to 18. But the biggest thing is I don't expect a Ricky Stenhouse Jr. win in 2025. It was great to see in 2024. It was great to see in 2023. But I don't expect to see Ricky Stenhouse Jr. putting that Hayek Chevrolet into victory lane in 2025. Probably expect Ricky to be right where he was in 2024 in points as well. Probably between 25th and 27th. And again, I like Ricky. I don't know what to expect from Hayek going into the season. That's all. Let's get to the chat line. All right, we got Mark right now. Mark checked in back onto the playoffs. By playoff 16, there's going to be Bell, Blaney, Bowman, Bush. Okay, interesting. William Byron, Ross Chastain, Austin Dillon, Chase Elliott, Denny Hamlin, Brad Keselowski, Kyle Larson, Joey Logano, Tyler Reddick, Suarez, Shane Van Gisbergen, and Wallace. Pretty interesting top 16, Mark. In Mark from Racing Paradise's prediction, his final 4, he's got Logano, Reddick, Elliott, and Bell, with the champion of Reddick. Wow, I'm going to be honest with you, Mark. You're very high on Kyle Busch. You're kind of making me feel bad with my 2025 prediction. So let's get back to our Chevrolet preview, and we're gonna go over to Colleague Racing. So Colleague Racing, AJ Allmendinger returns back to the Cup Series. Ty Dillon is going to be taking over the 10 car, and I want to ask this question, and I may come off as a hater, and I really at this point don't care. But what has Ty Dillon done in his racing career to warrant a Cup Series ride at this point? Last year, I know he was in the Truck Series with Rackley War. He didn't win a race. Let's pull up his stats real quick, courtesy of NASCAR.com, in the Craftsman Truck Series. In 18 starts, Ty Dillon had 0 top 5s, 0 top 10s. And then he also had he had 0 wins, 0 top 5s, 2 top 10s. And then Ty Dillon also had 1 DNF in the Truck Series. Ty Dillon, honestly, if you told me he was racing in the truck series last year, I would have told you that I didn't even remember him driving in it. And that's how I feel like with Ty Dillon, I just feel like we're at this point with him where it's like, what have you done in your career to continue warrant these rides? Also, one thing with Trackhouse or not Trackhouse, excuse me, Colleague, jumping the gun, sorry, not Trackhouse, Colleague. One thing with Colleague Racing that I kind of am scratching my head on. I mean, another new driver lineup. This is what now year 3? Yeah, they came in 2022, so this is going to be year 4. They've had now this is going to be the second straight year with all new drivers in their cars. Because you had Haley in 2022. Okay, Haley left after 23, but okay, in 22 you had Justin Haley. In 23 you had Justin Haley and AJ Allmendinger. AJ Allmendinger goes back to the Xfinity in 2024. Last year you had Daniel Hemrick, and then you had a bunch of rotational guys with like the Josh Williams of the world, and AJ ran a couple races. I know Shane Van Gisbergen ran a couple races. So there's been no consistency at the Cup level for a young organization. Why in the world do you not have consistency? I'm going to tell you right now, Ty Dillon's not going to be competitive this year. He's not. I'm writing him off already. I could be completely wrong. So go to the casino and make that bet. I'm kidding. But this is a young program at the Cup level. And I get it. AJ's had success at the Cup in the Colleague cars, right? He won in 2021 at the Indy Road Course, and he won at the Charlotte Roval. With all the road course action that we have on the Cup Series schedule, I could see AJ Allmendinger winning a race before the playoffs and getting his car into the playoffs, and that'd be a big step forward for Colleague. But what do I expect from Colleague after this season, though, after 25's over? Are we going to have a new driver lineup? Are we going to have Are we going to have another new teammate for AJ Allmendinger? They've struck out massively filling that hole with that second car. And like I said, for an organization that's trying to grow, at one point, I remember asking this question to people back in 23. I remember talking about this even further back before I started doing podcasts. I thought Colleague Racing coming out of 2020, 2021 was probably Chevrolet's best Xfinity team, maybe second best behind Junior Motorsports. And I feel like even their Xfinity program has taken a step back. And I feel like that, and I do feel like they have a ton of smart people at Colleague Racing. I love Matt Colleague. I love what Chris Rice brings to the team. I think they have a lot of great talent there. So that's why I'm very confused on why we continue recycling drivers. The other thing too is that I feel like Colleague doesn't have the patience. I don't feel like they have the patience to develop a driver at this point. I feel like they want to win because they have won races in the Cup Series on 2 road courses. Again, what do I expect from Ty Dillon? Absolutely nothing. But let's talk about AJ Allmendinger. So AJ Allmendinger went back down to the Cup Series or Xfinity Series in 2024. AJ ended up coming up 7 points short of winning the Xfinity Series championship, where he finished third. In the Xfinity Series in 2024, again, stats courtesy of NASCAR.com, AJ had 1 win, 7 top 5s, 18 top 10s, 3 DNFs, and 258 laps led. AJ was very, very quiet for a majority of last year until we got to Vegas in the playoffs. And then he ended up getting into the playoffs. He ended up winning that race, obviously, at Vegas. Got himself into the championship 4. Now, with his return to the Cup, I do expect, because I don't think necessarily AJ Allmendinger was bad in 23. I don't. And I think after doing another year in Xfinity coming back to Cup, I think that AJ could put that car on certain tracks in the front of the pack, right? I do think that AJ is very good on road courses. There's no question about that whatsoever. And he could probably pull a win off this year on a road course. I think AJ also does a pretty good job on very heavy braking zone tracks. I do. Because they also it reminds him of driving on a road course. So that's why I feel like that Vegas win was kind of a surprise. I'm excited to see AJ Allmendinger back up the Cup Series, but what realistically do I expect from Colleague Racing in 2025? Zero wins. Probably put AJ Allmendinger within the 20, probably in the range of 19, 20, 21 in the points, unless he gets a win. That's a big if. And then with Ty Dillon, where do I expect him in the points in 2025? Well, Daniel Hemrick finished 29th. That's probably where I expect Ty Dillon. I don't think that Ty Dillon's going to make a significant impact whatsoever. He may come away with a top 10 this year. He may come away with a top 15. I just don't know what to expect from Colleague. It's to me one of the it's one of the weirdest teams to look at the moment. Let's get to the chat real quick. And we got Mark checking in once again. He said he agrees with Colleague Racing. Yeah, like I said, not to harp on it and not to to knock them while they're down, but I really don't know like what to expect, and I just there's a lot of smart people that are making a lot of bad decisions over at Colleague. Let's just say that right now. They need consistency, and I'm hoping that AJ maybe brings balance back into that stable and gives him an opportunity to restructure the program and be like, listen, we do have elite speed. We can get to that through that program. Final point on Colleague, and I will say this, I think the worst thing that could have happened with Colleague Racing is they let Justin Haley go. I think Haley has some great talent, or he could be, he's got good to great. I don't think Haley will ever be elite, but I think he's got good to great talent. And I think Colleague made a mistake because that's a driver that they developed. And unfortunately, they let him go out of the stable. Next up on the Chevrolet 2025 season preview, let's get to Spire Motorsports. I think that this is probably the biggest. This team's going to be the most interesting team going into the season. They spent money like they are a big program. They did. Driver lineup in 2025, as mentioned, we have Justin Haley, Michael McDowell, and Carson Hocevar. So Haley returns after that mid-season trade, which kind of came out of left field. I never expected that. McDowell comes over from Front Row Motorsports, where he had a really good 3-year stretch with them. And Carson Hocevar, who, word around the, Facebook pages and all that type of stuff among NASCAR fans, there's a lot of hope and a lot of potential with Carson Hocevar going into 2025. Let's kick things off with Justin Haley first, because we were just talking about him. Justin Haley in 2024 ended up finishing 31st in the points. Now, granted, Haley also had what? What was that? 26 races. Or was it 20 minus 3, 23 races, excuse me. Sorry, doing math live. So Haley had 23 races in Rick Ware Racing Equipment. Okay, let's start this discussion with that. I thought what Justin Haley did in Rick Ware Equipment was phenomenal. And I think a lot of fans in NASCAR felt like that was a sensational performance of what he did, especially where the equipment was at, right? Rick Ware Racing is nowhere near being ready to be competitive and ready to be a top 10 car. Well, Justin Haley kind of basically went against the odds. He had 3 top 10s last year. Then, like I said, he had that midseason trade where he went over to Spire Motorsports. Haley's stat line again in 2024 was he finished 31st in the points, 0 wins, 0 top 5s, 3 top 10s, 13 top 20s, with an average finish of 23.4. 23 races of those in 2024 were with Rick Ware Racing Equipment. And I'm not justifying because I don't think he did not do anything special over at Spire. But I'm also going to give him a pass. It is very difficult to get traded in NASCAR halfway through a season, or 3/4 of a season at that point, excuse me, and expect him to try to win races, try to be a competitive car, and have him try to be a top 5, top 10 car. So let's give Haley a pass at the end of last year when we went to Spire, but let's look at what he really did at Rick Ware Racing. That was remarkable. I was at Darlington last year in the spring, and I could not believe I saw a Rick Ware Racing car on a non-drafting track finish in the top 10. I'm going to be honest with you, too. Justin Haley is very sneaky good at Darlington. If you look at his driver log at Darlington, he's kind of good there. Could actually maybe pull off a win. Next driver up in the Spire camp, then that's Michael McDowell. Michael McDowell comes over from Front Row Motorsports, where he ran there in 2024, comes over to Spire in 2025. 2024 stat line for Michael McDowell, finished 23rd in the points, 0 wins, 2 top 5s, 7 top 10s, 17 top 20s, and a 21.3 average finish. Now, the one thing with Michael McDowell is that he won a ton of poles last year. So this is where I'm kind of confused on where I'm at with Spire Motorsports again, or as well. McDowell ended up showcasing a bunch of that speed. Great. That's awesome. But to ask the audience this question, was Michael McDowell showcasing his own talent, or was Michael McDowell showcasing how far Front Row Motorsports has come? Because I think there's a correlation there that, yeah, it's great that Michael McDowell had that success. Front Row Motorsports had a lot of speed. 2025 is going to show us which one ended up winning in that separation. For me, I think it's going to be Front Row. It was a Front Row Motorsports Equipment that made Michael McDowell as successful as he was in 2025 or 2024. Excuse me. As of note 2, Michael McDowell goes from Front Row Motorsports and he goes into the 71 car that was vacated by Zane Smith after this season. Zane Smith's stats in the 71 that Michael McDowell is going to be driving. Zane Smith had a 23.2 average finish with 0 wins, 2 top 5s, 4 top 10s, and 14 top 20s. We talked about Zane Smith last week with Ford. I kind of raised the same question with Zane Smith. Is Zane Smith going to be better because he went into that equipment, and how good is that 71 Spire Motorsports car? And right now, that's something that we can't answer. Based off of last year, I don't think Zane Smith didn't have talent. I think Zane Smith did have talent. I just don't think Spire was funding the 71 properly for Zane Smith. Now, again, this is what I'm saying with Spire Motorsports. They, after the 2024 season, they have acted like a big market team. They have acted like a big market NASCAR team. With the money that they've been spending and investment on the crew chiefs they brought in, Rodney Childress has come over. A bunch of sponsorship money coming in. Spire's got a lot of big shoes to fill this year going into the season. A lot of questions to answer. The final driver of the Spire stable, which I personally think is probably the best driver in that stable, and that's Carson Hocevar. So let's talk about Carson Hocevar's 2024 stats. Again, all stats that I'm reading are courtesy of NASCAR.com this week. Carson Hocevar finished 21st in the points. He ended up having 0 wins, 1 top 5, 6 top 10s, 23 top 20s, and an 18.3 average finish in his rookie campaign. I think Carson Hocevar has a ton of talent. I think he's a guy that I'm surprised. Let me rephrase that. I'm surprised that Carson Hocevar ended up at Spire Motorsports. I think that he had a ton of talent that could have earned him, and he probably got stuck at Spire, but I expected him probably after last year, maybe going into this year, or at the end of last year, maybe at the end of this year, going into a bigger car or a bigger ride. Carson Hocevar to me has on tap potential. He is a prospect still. Him and Zane Smith are kind of identical. Carson Hocevar is only 21 years old. I'm sorry, he might be 22 now. That's a prospect. And an 18.3 average finish in the Cup Series and a 21st point standing finish in 2024. Carson Hocevar only finished behind in the points Chris Buescher, Bubba Wallace, Ross Chastain, and Kyle Busch. Those are the only drivers he's behind in the overall final point standings from last year. I know a lot of fans are very excited about Carson Hocevar, as they should be. As they should be. He's a young driver that does not put his car really in harm's way. And what do I mean by that? Well, how many DNFs did he have last year? He only had 2. That's very rare for a rookie in the Cup Series, especially one as aggressive as he is. Remember the Truck Series in 2023? We all complained how aggressive he was and he was wrecking everybody and all that type of stuff. He only had 2 DNFs in 2024 at the Cup level. 18.3 average finish. And again, this is an Aspire Motorsports equipment that was not as where it is now, right? Spire did not spend a lot of money last year. They were trying to develop and try to build a foundation. I feel like my final point from Spire Motorsports, I feel like Spire is the complete opposite of Colleague. I feel like Spire's like, listen, we need to build a foundation. We need to continue building it around young drivers. Keep the system flowing. I mean, they got 2 young guys in Hocevar and Haley. And then they got the vet in Michael McDowell. Whereas Colleague is like, I'm just going to continue rotating because we feel like we have the equipment that's quick enough and fast enough, but we don't have the drivers that can put our cars in victory lane. And it's like Spire's doing the complete opposite. And to me, I kind of feel like Spire is probably a couple of steps ahead at this point over Colleague Racing. Final predictions on Spire Motorsports in 2025. For this program, I had to put down 0 wins. I put down 0 wins, but I do expect a lot of their cars to be running in the top 15 and possibly the top 10. And if you can get your cars into the top 15 and the top 10, you can run in the front and all that good stuff. Good things happen. My favorite quote from 2024 from any driver was from Zane Smith, formerly from Spire Motorsports, when he legitimately said, wow, these cars run great in clean air. And I think Spire this year, with how much talent they've brought in and how much money that's going to be coming into the program, I think Spire's going to learn that lesson really quickly, and they're going to find ways to get to the front. Again, do I think they're going to win a race this year? I do not. I have 0. But I expect them to be top 10, top 15 cars and continue building that foundation where they can continue growing into a successful organization. Next up on our Chevrolet season preview is Richard Childress Racing. Oh, man. Okay, so I am going to start off with Austin Dillon. I'm going to start off with Austin Dillon first. And then I'm going to probably go. I'm going to go with Kyle Busch second. And the reason why is because a lot of people are very up and down on him going into 2025. So let's get to Austin Dillon first. And Austin Dillon Austin Dillon 2024 stat line, courtesy of NASCAR.com. Finished 32nd in the points. He had one win, one top five, five top 10s, 13 top 20s, and a 22.6 average finish. So we already know the story about Austin Dillon in 2024, right? Went to Richmond, had an opportunity to win that race, got beat off the start on the final restart, ended up wrecking Joey Logano, ended up wrecking Denny Hamlin. What got him in trouble was the crew chief saying, wreck him, wreck him, wreck him. Okay. So Austin Dillon went from a playoff driver from winning Richmond to a driver who got the win doesn't count to the playoffs, or the win doesn't count for the playoffs, and misses the playoffs completely. Of note, it just came out today, courtesy of NASCAR.com. Austin Dillon's win at Richmond does count for the All-Star race, so he will race in the All-Star race in 2025. What do I expect from Austin Dillon in 2024 or 2025? Well, again, another outlier of a program. I thought Richard Childress Racing at the end of last year, or at times at the end of the regular season going into the playoffs, I thought Richard Childress Racing had a ton of speed. Austin Dillon ended up winning Richmond after the Olympic break. He ended up winning Richmond. I know that it didn't count for the playoffs, and I know that there was a debacle, but listen, when Austin Dillon has a car and has the speed to go win a race, Austin Dillon usually capitalizes in that category. Daytona is an outlier. I'm not going to use that as an example. But the Coke 600 in 2017, yeah, it was a strategy race, but I'm not going to crucify a driver for having the right strategy and having a car that had the speed. Just because you have the strategy, if you don't have the speed, doesn't mean you're going to win the race. He had the speed. So he usually capitalizes when he has the speed. Look at Texas in 2020. Richard Childress Racing. Both Reddick and Austin Dillon all floated down to Texas, had great speed, all that good stuff. Austin Dillon wins that race. And it felt very similar with Richmond back in this past August. Offloaded, had a great qualifying effort, had a lot of speed. Until the final caution, he was in the lead. Final caution comes out, ends up getting beat on the restart by Logano, ends up, going in turns 3 and 4 too hot, takes Logano out, and then takes Denny Hamlin out. Do I see Austin Dillon having one of those races, though, where it's like, wow, he's on, he's great in 2025? I just don't know where Richard Childress Racing's at right now. And that's going to be my answer. I don't know where Richard Childress Racing is at. Once Andy Petrie left last year, I felt, damn, they're good. They actually have speed. I think what was holding them back was Andy Petrie, which I think that move was made for Richard to keep Kyle Busch happy. I do. But then again, it's not like they really replicated, a bunch of wins. It's not like they didn't, they just had speed. Speed clearly wins this sport. We all know that. Austin Dillon, though, you got to get off to a fast start. I think if he can capitalize in the beginning part of the season at like a super speedway, I think that the rest of the season he can kind of figure out himself and maybe pull off another win in the season, right? He hasn't won multiple races in a season yet in his career. Fun fact though, Austin Dillon fans are probably the funniest fan base and outside Matty D fans. They get so mad when you criticize Austin Dillon and say he's not really that great of a driver. He's a good driver. Let's say that. Austin Dillon is a good driver. He's not great. Come on. He's not great. He's not elite. He wasn't what he was hyped up to be as a prospect. That's what ended up happening. But at the same time, as a podcaster that's sitting on my microphone and talking shit on drivers that win races, I would love to have Austin Dillon's career. Next one up in the Richard Childress Racing stable is one Kyle Busch. Let's talk about Kyle's 2024 season. Kyle ended up finishing 20th in the points, missed the playoffs, 0 wins, 5 top 5s, 10 top 10s, 20 top 20s, an 18.3 average finish, similar to Carson Hocevar, and 230 laps led. Kyle Busch, to me, again, similar to Austin Dillon. Where do I see these guys finishing? Well, it depends how much speed Richard Childress Racing has. Was the speed that Richard Childress Racing had at times in 2024, was that real when Andy Petrie left? Was that real speed? If it's real speed, both these guys are in good shape. If it's, yeah, we flashed it prematurely, then they're not going to win. Kyle Busch came very close multiple times towards the end of the regular season to pull off the win, and he unfortunately came up just short, right? Chase Briscoe outraced him at Darlington in the cutoff race, and Harrison Burton got around him in Daytona. So I got to give Kyle a lot of credit too. He said he had a very good quote last year. He's like, I'm not going to wreck the kid, meaning Harrison Burton, and potentially hurt him. Very classy move by Kyle Busch. But what Kyle Busch am I expecting in 2025? I definitely expect a lot better. But the question I raised to the audience tonight, Kyle Busch feels to me where he's at in his career similar to where Jimmy Johnson was at entering 2019. Jimmy at the end of 2018, okay, so let's backtrack, even more parallels. 2017, Jimmy Johnson won 3 races. 2023, Kyle Busch won 3 races. Jimmy Johnson in 2018 won 0 races. Still made the playoffs, though. Kyle Busch in 2024 won 0 races. Missed the playoffs. And I feel like that's where we are at, maybe possibly with Kyle Busch. Are we over the age cliff as a driver? He's been doing it for a long time. He's been doing it for over 20 years. At some point, these drivers end up hitting that age cliff, and the Mendoza line falls on them. And it's usually around 20 years. We had the same issue with Harvick. Harvick still put up some good seasons in 23. He won 2 races in 2022. So could Kyle Busch be like that? He could. But it's starting to seem very eerie similar to Jimmy Johnson, where Jimmy Johnson's career path was. Do I think Kyle Busch still has talent? Absolutely. I don't think the talent fell off. But at the same time, it's going back to the same question. What type of speed does Richard Childress Racing have in 2025? A lot of fans that have reached out to us, as you heard Mark, who commented on our chat, a lot of fans have reached out to us saying that Kyle Busch Redemption Tour in 2025. I had it in 2023, but 2025, a lot of people were at Kyle Busch Redemption Tour. I'm not fully bought in on that. As I said, do I think the talent faded? No. Do I think that he hit a part of an age where he's fallen off an age cliff and the Mendoza line's falling? Absolutely. 20 years is a long time in the sport, and a lot of the drivers that have ran for 20 years start falling apart. I know the biggest thing that probably killed me, especially considering I like Kyle Busch, I think the biggest thing that killed me in 2024 was he did not win and extend that winning streak. Final predictions for Richard Childress Racing in 2025. Well, I do have, if you're a Kyle Busch fan, I do have one win for Kyle Busch in 2025. I do think that Kyle Busch gets back to victory lane, and I think a lot of people are going to be excited about that in the sport of NASCAR, because I do think that Richard Childress' speed is actually real. I do think that removing Andy Petrie and bringing on Jason Alexander as the overall president, I think is a great opportunity for that program to take the next step. I think Petrie was a great person for a while. I think he was an innovative, smart, intelligent human being in NASCAR. I just think at some point it's almost like an NFL head coach. When does the voice get stale? Two more teams up on our Chevrolet preview. Let's get over to team number 5 from Chevrolet, and that's going to be Trackhouse Racing. Big new looks for Trackhouse and Justin Marks and Pitbull in 2025. Driver lineup is Shane Van Gisbergen makes his Cup debut, or makes his full-time Cup debut this season. Daniel Suarez and Ross Chastain. Let's kick things off with Shane Van Gisbergen as the newest member of Trackhouse Racing. Shane Van Gisbergen, all stats courtesy of NASCAR.com, are going to be from the Xfinity Series. So Shane Van Gisbergen finished the Xfinity Series 12th in the points with 3 wins, 7 top 5s, 10 top 10s, and 4 DNS with 100 laps led. One thing with Shane Van Gisbergen that was pretty interesting in 2024. We all knew he was going to be the road course warrior that he was brought over to be, right? We all knew that he was going to do well on road courses. We all knew that. There was not a question whatsoever. I was utterly surprised in Shane Van Gisbergen's season in 2024. There was multiple races that come to my mind that one of them he did not finish well in, but he ran very well for majority of the race. He got caught up in someone else's nonsense. That was Pocono over the summer. That's a very difficult track for a driver to come into, especially as a rookie in the Xfinity Series, try to figure out how to drive that track. I was pretty impressed with that. Like I said, he got caught up in someone else's nonsense. He was on pace to get a top 10 in that race. The other one was the Brickyard in the Xfinity Series. He had a top 5 in the Brickyard. So for me, with Shane Van Gisbergen, again, take the road courses out. We already know that. Super speedways, I think he's going to be completely fine on. That again, those are outlier tracks. He's going to have drafting mates and all that type of stuff. And even if he wrecks, again, that's just the nature of super speedway racing, which we all love, but we also hate. What I really want to see from Shane Van Gisbergen in 2025 is what can he do on the 1.5s? That was his biggest struggle this past season in the Xfinity Series. Vegas, he did not look good. Kansas, he looked lost. The 1.5s were a struggle for him. Vince said it last year on this podcast. Shane Van Gisbergen is very talented at heavy braking zone tracks, right? That's why a lot of the tracks like Phoenix and Martinsville, the road courses clearly, those tracks to him are going to come very natural. And that's maybe why I feel like he did very well at Pocono for a while in that race. And that's why I feel like he did very well at Indy in that race, because there are times, yes, they're high speed, high pace, but they are braking zones in that track that you can get around a lot of competition. I'm excited to see what Shane Van Gisbergen is going to do. You knew Justin Marks wasn't going to keep him down in the Xfinity Series for that long. He was going to definitely, you didn't bring him over from New Zealand to basically be like, hey, you're going to run Xfinity for the next 3 years, and then when you're ready, you're going to run Cup. They wanted to get him in that car as quick as possible, and they're going to do it. Super excited to see Shane Van Gisbergen full-time in the Cup Series. Next up in the Trackhouse driver lineup is going to be Daniel Suarez. So Daniel Suarez, to me, he had a surprising 2024. I think was the key word that I put that on my notes. Surprising 2024. Daniel Suarez in 2024 had finished 12th in the points with 1 win, 4 top 5s, 9 top 10s, 20 top 20s, 17.9 average finish with 209 laps led. So Daniel Suarez, obviously, we already know the story about what happened to him in Atlanta, right? All the way up to that point, closest finish in NASCAR history. I think that win is what he needed the most, and clearly that's an understatement. I really think that win is what helped him get a contract extension with Trackhouse. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think I don't think if he gets that win and makes the playoffs, I don't think he gets a contract extension. Because remember, it took a while to get that rolling. I don't know if it was on his side. I don't know if it was on Trackhouse side. But with Daniel Suarez, like I said, he is always, to me, he's always going to be a top 20 car. He is. Trackhouse Racing has great equipment. They're a good stable. They're a great program. I think at this point we can say that they're Chevrolet's number two. Um, but what do I need from Daniel Suarez? Well, at this point, I think Daniel Suarez is in that seat until Connor Zellage is ready to come up into the into the Cup Series. If you look at his contract and if you look at Zillage's trajectory, they're parallel to where they're going to meet, where Suarez's contract's going to be up and Zillage is going to take that seat. But that doesn't mean Daniel Suarez should just give up. I mean, Daniel Suarez has talent and he has equipment to get himself, and clearly we've seen it now 2 out of the last 3 years. We have seen Daniel Suarez make the playoffs and get into the round of 12. And he's been in the round of 12, like I said, 2 of the last 3 seasons. As I continue saying, if you continue putting the car in the front, you will be able to come away and hopefully, luck is on your side, which it was in Atlanta. What do I expect from him in 2025? Well, I do expect I expect him to be more of a top 10 car. I do. Definitely top 15. So I do expect more top 20s out of him. He had 20 top 20s. I expect a couple more out of him. I expect a couple more top 10s and maybe like a 1 or 2 more top 5s. So I expect a win from him in 2025? Probably not. I'd be surprised if Suarez got in the victory lane in 2025. Final driver up in the Trackhouse stable, and that's probably the most polarizing driver on the circuit right now. You either love him, you either hate him. This podcast loves him, and that's Ross Chastain. Chastain in 2024 finished 19th in the points, 1 win, 6 top 5s, 14 top 10s, 27 top 20s, with an average finish of 15.8 with 311 laps led. So I think Ross Chastain, one thing I can say about Chastain is whatever is going on at Trackhouse Racing, they have opportunities and the equipment to run very well in 1.5s. They have figured the 1.5s out very well. For me, Ross Chastain, I get it. He finished 19th. I'm going to be, before I even get into that topic, I will say this. Chastain definitely disappointed in 2024. He did. Made the playoffs in 22, made the playoffs in 23, made the round of 4 in 22, made the round of 12 in 23. Chastain did not get a win, and he didn't get a win in places I expected him. But I also have to say this about Chastain, right? Yeah, he finished 19th in the points. He had 4 DNFs. There was that stretch in the summer where I was like, Jesus, he's just DNFing. Nashville comes to my mind. Do I think he wins Nashville? No, but I definitely don't think he DNFs. That whole race was a mess at the end of it. Daytona. Let's call it as is. This podcast was down there. We thought we were going to witness a smash and melon by him winning the Daytona 500. And last lap, we all, you saw him kind of trying to shuffle around, trying to get into that position, ends up wrecking in that race. Ross Chastain, to me, I think, not to make excuses for him, because he did not make the playoffs. And it's kind of unacceptable at this point in a Trackhouse Racing car. They're built to win. They just are at this point. But the one thing I will say about Ross Chastain is that I don't think everything was his fault in 2024. I just rattled off 2 races that he basically essentially, got screwed in. He ended up winning the race at Kansas, so we got to take that in consideration. So that's a job well done by him. I do expect a Ross Chastain. I don't want to say a breakout season for Ross Chastain, but I definitely expect higher expectations for him. But at the same time, looking at the stats courtesy of NASCAR.com, 27 top 20s. 27 top 20s. I mean, the highest amount of top 20s from last year was Chase Elliott at 32. And then you had 28 with Bubba Wallace, or 29 with Chris Busch, or 28 with Bubba Wallace. And you had a bunch of guys tied with 28 and 27. So Chastain is there, and that again, that's top 20. I don't know what I didn't statistically break it down where in the top 20 you finished, but Chastain and the one car are there. That car is there. Disappointing 2024, but definitely high expectations for him in 2025. And with all that being said, with the Trackhouse Racing cars, my final prediction on the season is going to be 3 wins for Trackhouse Racing. I got 2 for Chastain, 1 for Shane Van Gisbergen at a road course. All right, here we go, guys. I think this is what everyone's been waiting for, and we got Hendrick Motorsports, the final stable in the Chevrolet camp. And due to the new charter agreement that was done by NASCAR exiting 2024, Hendrick Motorsports and Joe Gibbs Racing are the only two organizations that are grandfathered in to have 4 charters. So it's going to be weird seeing a lot of 3 charter teams at this point, but that's where the sport is at. That's where the charter system is at. Hendrick Motorsports still keeps their 4, and the driver lineup in 2025, we already know them. It's Alex Bowman, it's Chase Elliott, it's Kyle Larson, it's William Byron. So I think a couple weeks ago, you guys heard me talk about the tweet with Toyotas and Joe Gibbs Racing that, hey, you know what? Joe Gibbs Racing, probably in this transitional year, grooming talent to get to the next level. Well, Hendrick Motorsports went through that back in 2018 and 2019. And here we are with the 4 drivers in that stable entering altogether year number 5. Because Larson came over in 21. So 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. So entering year 5 together. Let's kick things off with Alex Bowman. Again, 2024 stats for Bowman. 1 win, 8 top 5s, 17 top 10s, 28 top 20s, 14.8 average finish, and 67 laps led. Bowman made a round of 12 appearance and exited after the round of 12 due to a disqualification at the Roval. Alex Bowman in 2024 was a very interesting driver. I don't think Alex Bowman was the 9th best driver in the circuit last year, but I definitely don't think he was worse than 11. Bowman probably was the model of consistency in the sport. He ended up winning that race on a gamble at the Chicago Street Course. That was a great call. That was a great call by him and his crew chief. I think that, again, shoulda, woulda, coulda. I think if Reddick doesn't hit the wall, Reddick does probably pass him. But Reddick hit the wall. He made a mistake. Bowman got into victory lane. Now, when he got into the playoffs, he took advantage of his opportunity in the playoffs. And it would have been interesting if he did not get disqualified coming out of the Roval, what we could have saw with Alex Bowman. I do believe that Bowman probably does not make, he probably wouldn't make the round of 4. Let's call it as this. He does not make the round of 4. But giving Bowman an opportunity at a track like Las Vegas in the next round, that would have been pretty interesting. What do I expect from Alex Bowman? Again, 28 top 20s. Do I expect probably very, very similar top 20s in regards to that? He was at 28 in 2024, probably going to be identical in 2025. 17 top 10s. I'm going to say pretty identical within top 10s. I give him one more top 10. And he had 8 top 5s. I give him one more top 5. I don't see Alex Bowman winning a race in 2025, though. Next driver up in the Hendrick stable is everyone's favorite driver, Chase Elliott. Pretty cool paint scheme, by the way, with the Amazon Prime. So, most popular driver, hooks up with the new service provider of NASCAR, Amazon Prime. I mean, it's a good combination. I mean, you're gonna have a bunch of people complaining, or you're gonna either have a bunch of people loving Amazon, or you're gonna have a bunch of people hating Amazon. Chase Elliott in 2024, his stats were seventh overall. He finished seventh in the point standings with 1 win, 11 top fives, 19 top tens, 32 top 20s with an average finish of 11.7, which capped him out at number one. Capped him out number one in average finish in 2025 or 2024. Chase Elliott, to me, had a kind of a good redemption comeback story in 2024. 2023 was a total nightmare for the driver of the number 9 team. Chase Elliott, for me, was a driver that I was like, God, I mean, if he could just find speed. So he won the opening stage at Daytona, then didn't win another stage until the Martinsville Fall Race. But it's what I saw in the playoffs that I was like, you know what? I'm feeling pretty good about the 9 going into 2025. I feel pretty good about Chase Elliott in 2025. I do. They got speed. I don't know if it's because he finally figured out how to drive the car. I mean, he ended up racing very well down the stretch. He had a great run at Martinsville, came up just short to Ryan Blaney. I thought Chase Elliott was going to end up winning that race, but unfortunately just came up just short to Ryan Blaney. But, 431 laps led is just not going to cut it for Chase Elliott in 2025. It's just not. He needs to find a way to continue putting that car in the front. When you get clean air and you have opportunities to run in the front, good things happen. Now, they had a great gamble and a great strategy down at Texas last year to win that race, and that was a great job by Alan Gustafson and a great job by Chase Elliott to capitalize. But it's not always going to work out like that. They have to find ways to win early and find ways to win often. Do I expect them to do that in 2024 or 2025? Absolutely. The talent is there. He's got this. I think he's finally figured out how to drive the car. He's finally figured out the speed of the car. I expect good things out of Chase Elliott in 2024. Excuse me, I keep saying 2024. Final 2 drivers. Kyle Larson. 2024 stats for Kyle Larson. He finished 6th in the points, 6 wins, 15 top 5s, 18 top 10s, 25 top 20s with a 12.9 average finish. Kyle Larson also had 5 DNFs. But the biggest thing for me with Kyle Larson, and as I said last week, as we exited the show, right? We exited the show in last week with Fords. There's 5 elite drivers right now in the NASCAR Cup Series season. I didn't tell you who they were last week on purpose. But those 5 this week that I'm going to tell you is Kyle Larson, Christopher Bell, Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano, and William Byron. Those are your 5 elite drivers in the sport. With Reddick coming into the fringe of elite and greatness. Kyle Larson led 1,700 total laps last year while missing 1 race. He missed the longest race of the year. He missed the longest race of the season with the most stages to gain from it. Kyle Larson, what he did in the 2025 season was remarkable. 6 wins with a 12.9 average finish and 1,700 laps led. Kyle Larson, yes, that not showing up to Charlotte did come back to eventually bite him in the butt in the playoffs. It did, unfortunately. But it's not even what I'm talking about. Him missing Charlotte, though, is not even a conversation if he doesn't spin out at Homestead. If he doesn't end up wrecking at Atlanta. There was a couple, if he doesn't have issues at Watkins Glen, those mistakes in the playoffs is what cost him an opportunity. And even with missing a full race and those mistakes, he still almost won and almost got into the Final 4. Cody Zeeb from NASCAR Gambling Podcast, listen to them as well, NASCAR Gambling Podcast. Cody Zeeb said it best. He tweeted it out. He said, I'm sorry, where did Verstappen finish in the Chili Bowl? This was a couple weeks ago. Hashtag best driver in the world. It's Kyle Larson. You can't tell me otherwise. He missed a whole race and just came up a couple points short of making the Final Four. But we'll blame him missing Charlotte instead of actually talking about his mistakes that he made in the playoffs and the very few mistakes. And the only reason why those mistakes bit him in the butt is because he did miss that race. What do I expect from Kyle Larson? Well, I continue expecting us watching the trajectory of greatness. I compare this to watching Patrick Mahomes in NASCAR. He's incredible. He is talented. He has become, to me, the face of the sport. Chase Elliott might be the best among fans, but Kyle Larson has now become the face of NASCAR. He is extremely talented. He's no doubt about it. He's going to get his fair share of wins. He's also going to wreck, and it's also going to piss you off as a Larson fan. But what do I expect from Kyle Larson in 2025? Again, the trajectory to become an elite and getting in that greatness category. He's going to get his fair share of wins. Let's not start that he's not going to win next year. He's going to win, and you're going to like it. Final driver from the Hendrick stable is William Byron. William Byron in 2024 finished 13th in the final standings with 3 wins, 13 top 5s, 21 top 10s, 27 top 20s with a 12.9 average finish. The only Hendrick driver in the championship 4. Other accomplishments from William Byron. Well, we talked about Chastain losing the 500. William Byron won the 500. William Byron, to me, started off very, very hot in 2024. He won Daytona, he won Coda, he won Martinsville. And then that was it. Then he got ice cold. I actually predicted him to get knocked out early in the playoffs because of how ice cold he was. Ended up predicting that one incorrectly. Very sorry for all my William Byron fans. And he did eventually make it to the Final Four. William Byron finished 3rd in the overall standings. But what do I expect from Willie B in 2025? Again, this is another young driver that we are watching traject into the next level of his career. Right now, I have William Byron as an elite driver. One of the 5. Like I said, Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney, Kyle Larson, Christopher Bell, and William Byron. There's only 5 elite drivers in the sport. There's multiple great drivers in the sport, and then there's good, and then there's average. Those 5 I just mentioned they are elite. If you want to win a championship, they're going to have to go through them. William Byron has turned into that type of driver. He had his breakout in 2023. Just came up short of the championship. He once again made the Final Four in 2024. Came up short once again. Again, William Byron is knocking at the door. What do I expect from William Byron? Well, again, I continue expecting in a driver that's going to make it to a championship 4 and into staying into that elite category. That's what I expect with William Byron. Final predictions from Hendrick Motorsports in 2025. I have 8 wins from HMS in 2025. I got 8. I have 4 for Larson. I have 2 for Byron. I got 2 for Elliott. I got 0 for Bowman. Excuse me. So with all that being said, that's our final charter from the 2025 season preview. To run down the win total before we get to my Bowman Gray pick, we have Hendrick Motorsports winning 8 races in 2025. I have 3 for Trackhouse Racing. I have 1 for Richard Childress Racing, 0 for Spire, 0 for Colleague, 0 for Hayek. To head back over to the Fords. What do I have for the Fords? I have 1 for Front Row. I have 0 for Wood Brothers. I have 0 for Haas Factory Team. I have 4 for RFK. And then what I have for Penske is 5. Then in the Toyota stable, I have 10 for JGR in a transitional year. And I have 4 for 23XI, and I have 0 for Legacy. So, with all that being said, folks, that is our 2025 season preview. And let's load into my pick for Bowman Gray Stadium at the Clash. So, for all the fans that hated the LA Coliseum, I think seriously, Fast Motorsports raised a good question to you. Same size track. What's the difference on why you like Bowman's Gray instead of LA Coliseum? Can't wait to hear some of those answers. For me, my first prediction of 2025, no stats, no data. We're just going to have fun with it. I'm rolling out there with the prediction of Joey Logano winning this race on Sunday night at the Clash. Joey Logano has a knack for winning the inaugural events, right? He won at the first LA Coliseum race. He won at Gateway. I think he gets to Bowman Gray. With all that being said, thank you so much to all of you for tuning in. Again, follow us on YouTube at the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Amazon Music. Next week, we'll be talking about race recap, our first race recap of 2025. And then we'll do one more episode before we hit Daytona with the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast power rankings. Folks, I'm so excited. We are finally here in the regular season. With all that being said, again, thank you for everyone tuned in on YouTube tonight. The chat was fun. And again, we will be posting one thing I posted on our Facebook page is we will be doing a Thursday night audience engagement session. So look out for that. And with all that being said, enjoy your race weekend. If you're going to race, bundle up. I don't know what the weather's like in North Carolina this week, but bundle up, have fun, and look forward to talking to you next week. Talk about Bowman Gray. Have a wonderful night. Be safe. Goodbye.